You guys got the recording sign?
Yep. Yeah, it said recording.
Okay. You guys still agree to the consent for me to record this podcast and to release this podcast on various platforms?
Yep. Yes.
All right. Get a second here. Hello and welcome to Blanco's Conversations podcast. This podcast is about the thoughts and emotions we have when confronted with a chaotic world. Today, the topic is about reality, consciousness, free will, the individual self, basically the broad ideas of who we are and the world that we live in. I would like to start with free will. Anyone of you guys want to jump on that? You have any thoughts on free will, whether it exists or is it an illusion?
Go for it, Christian.
Hot potato.
So we'll start with the easy question.
I mean, I could
Do I
jump in.
think free will is an illusion?
Sure.
Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say about it first. I get to bounce back on you.
Well, I think the reason why I have these podcasts, I think, is to figure out how it is. What do I think and what do I feel? I think I have a general feeling of it, but I can't back it up. You know what I mean? It's one thing to say, hey, I think, the answer to the question is B, but what do I base that on, right? Which is why I want to talk to you guys, see how you guys feel. I feel that I do have free will. I feel that each individual, we're living in a world where we do get to make our choices. But if you listen to people talk about the idea of it, especially like philosophers and stuff like that, the argument is always made that we don't have it. And what they say is this: if you really do have control of your will, right? And I tell you, do a little thought experiment, which is focus. Let's talk about like mindfulness. Gerry knows what I'm talking about. Mindfulness. You probably know what I'm talking about. Mindfulness, right? You're doing a meditation, and the idea is to just focus on your breath. Inevitably, your mind will wander to something else, right? So then are we in control of ourselves then? If we can't control a simple thing, is just focus on one thing. And then where do these thoughts come from?
Obviously we don't have mastery of our minds.
Right.
And our focus.
Right.
So in those regards, no, we don't have control of it. I think it's not so cut and dry. I think it's a little bit of both. Well, it depends. I mean, I think we're jumping the gun on here, and we have to figure out first what is this?
Right. But how do you do that? How do you do that?
I don't know. We have to use our the best hardware that we have, which is pretty limited. If you look around, we don't have any kind of really great hardware for understanding the universe currently. We have to create it.
I agree. Yeah. Gerry, any thoughts?
But
yeah, I just feel like, frankly, I never really think about this question because I feel like it doesn't really matter whether we're free or not. I have to believe we're free.
Okay.
So for me, what matters most is that I subjectively allow myself to believe that. So I think some people could live their life fairly content, not believing that there's free will, but I'm not one of those people. If it's an illusion, then it's an illusion that I voluntarily sort of put on,
You swallowing the pill?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of things that I do like that I like conspiracy theories, for instance. I won't get off topic too much, but yeah, there's a lot of things like a conspiracy theory that I'll purposely allow myself to believe just because I want to understand how people arrive at that belief. And so I think free will is a lot like that. I have to believe that it's true because otherwise I just don't really care to put in effort.
Okay, so then that goes into I would say the category of that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it doesn't sound like you're saying that reality is real. I think it sounds like you're open to the idea that reality could be an illusion, but you're going all into that illusion because you need it. in order to exist, because if I believed I wasn't autonomous, then what the hell am I doing every day? Why am I getting up? Why am I doing all this stuff? You know what I mean? Because if I'm just a vessel, if you will, having inputs set into my brain to eat when I feel like I'm hungry, to go to work when I want to, and do this and that, then what's the point of it? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, to a large extent, I think a person could live a generally satisfying life, believing they have no free will. I'm just speaking for myself.
Right.
I just don't. I don't feel like why would I be culpable for anything, really? I think the law obviously recognizes both that people have a lot of things that happen to them as kids. They shape their behaviors, and when they break the law, they may be expressing that. Nevertheless, the law sort of says, doesn't matter if you kill someone, we're going to have to hold you
have
accountable.
responsibility for your actions, right?
Yeah, and so in some sense, yeah, I believe in free will precisely for that reason, that I want people to be responsible for their actions. So I ascribe free will to others, which is a bias that a lot of people have, and I ascribe it to myself when I feel like I've got no other choice. I say, well, you do have a choice.
Yeah. Christian, I just want to clarify.
You have to also bring in.
No, get. Sorry.
You have to also bring in how much does, like Gerry said, our upbringing affect us, our DNA affect us, society affect us, all swirling around in the subconscious. So how much of that is really our own doing versus programming that we've received over the years, not only including in our DNA, but also how we were raised and institutionalized in society. All of that stuff plays a role in our decisions every day. So how much of that is me actually making a decision or choice free from all of that, versus it all just affecting me and me in the moment being driven by these animal instincts all day long? And that's a good question, and I don't think anybody really has a definitive answer for it yet.
You brought up something. You're making me think of something here. So let's take a moment here to, another reason why I brought up this idea for our conversation is that is a thing in philosophy today where they say, imagine this. It's just another thought experiment, kind of like what I said before. Everything you touched on, if for somehow we could build this super computer, right? And it knows everything about you, everything about whatever happened. Think of the ultimate big brother, and everything from the Big Bang to right now, this computer has information on it. It's been recording since then, and it knows every thought you've ever had, every action, whatever's ever happened to you, right? It's theorized that this computer could predict everything that you're going to do, right? Because it's been around since the beginning to right now. It knows.
Yeah, they call that Facebook.
I believe so too. Have you guys watched Westworld? Westworld is dealing with all that type of thing.
Yeah, we have that already.
But I guess the question that I'm asking is, do you believe that's true? If theoretically, when we're just spitballing out here, if that computer exists, can it accurately predict to 100% every time, every action, every thought, every feeling that an individual is going to have? Is that possible?
Well, if the computer is the thing creating the model, sure.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's obviously not possible currently in human technology terms.
Right.
If the compute, like if we imagine that the universe is a computer, and again, we're imagining it, and it's creating this simulation, then sure, it probably, it's creating it right now, right now in this moment. And does it know what's going to happen next? I don't know. I don't.
What do you think, Gerry? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that one of the more interesting things about humans is that we're a mystery even to ourselves. So Richard, the data inputs better than anyone else knows the data inputs of yourself.
Okay.
And you know your own private thoughts, the things that say a computer couldn't really know, your secret thoughts. Yeah, I'm sure that you've had this experience where you surprise yourself, like, why did I do that?
Mm.
So I think, yeah, I think if it was possible to build such a system, it would have a lot of noise within its parameters, because it
Mhm.
just could not really capture people very well, because people are very noisy by design. We just do things that make no sense. There's things in our shadow that are a complete opposite of what the data inputs were giving. So the computer's monitoring my conscious actions, but it's not monitoring the opposite of that. And those things in my shadow also influence my behavior. So I just feel like people are so difficult to predict.
Mm.
And I just don't see that happening with a high level of accuracy. Maybe binomial choices, perhaps, but I just don't see that a machine saying today he's going to wake up at 8 a.m. and he's going to have
Right.
this kind of food, because I just don't see that happening.
That's interesting.
That would be
Christian,
boring.
It's very boring. Christian seems to think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the computer, is sort of creating the world. It sounded like you said, and since it's creating the
Well,
world,
no, I don't think it is. We're just thinking hypothetically in
right,
imagination. I don't think that this is a computer simulation that we're in,
right,
personally, but I don't think anybody knows what it is. So I'm open to anybody's ideas or whatever. We could talk all day about it, but at the end of the day, nobody knows what this is and what's going on.
right.
And really, what's the point of it outside of what we think is the point of it?
Yeah, I've thought about this for a while, because I've heard this. It's been a while. It's been on my mind, on and off, and I don't know. I guess when I get bored, I think about it. But to me, the argument is sort of, it's moot. It's a moot argument, because if this computer exists, which is crazy, like how do you have such a thing that could record everything in existence to the beginning, right? But let's throw that aside. Let's just say, okay, suspend disbelief. This
I've
computer
never
exists.
heard this argument personally. I've heard the this is a simulation argument, but I haven't heard the one about whether a computer could or couldn't predict everything.
Right, but let's just say,
I've never heard that one before.
Let's just suspend disbelief and say this computer does exist. I think there's a faulty element in this thinking, which is, just because a computer can predict every move that's going to happen next, it doesn't mean that it's controlling or has any kind of, or that we don't have free will, because that was like the beginning, what I was talking about. It doesn't mean that just because someone can predict doesn't mean you don't have free will. It just means that it has so much data, it knows where you're going to go, but you still have free will, because you have to choose to make that decision.
It's kind of like a bet making machine with a very high chance of probability, but still, that 1, 2, 3, 4% rate of discrepancy is a big deal when you look at the infinity of the universe. 1.213% of the infinite universe is a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of errors and wrong predictions, but there'll be a high chance of a lot of correct predictions as well.
Well,
I've never personally.
Go ahead, Gerry. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that I know this simulation debate is sort of kind of raging right now, but
yeah,
personally, I've never read much into it. In part because I feel like it's too technical for me.
Mm-hmm.
But another part of it is really that I think this debate has come into my mind through, in theology, for instance, people will say, does God know what you're going to do? Yes. And are you free? Right. And some religions, are you therefore no? And some say yes. And so I'm of the opinion that, yeah, I'm both free and God knows what I'm about to do. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And but to be that, I'm like, yeah, that's okay. It doesn't have to make sense. That's sort of how I would think about this debate. Is the machine capable of predicting my moves? Yes. Does that mean that you have no free will? Maybe. So do you have free will? Yes. Doesn't make any sense. I know. I accept that. It doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of times when you let these opposites sort of sit and both be true, it gives you your mind time to incubate it and understand an insight that unites these two things. And so right now, yeah, I think I'm both free and I'm largely determined. And those two things don't play with each other very well with Western logic.
Mm. Yeah. You got any comments on that, Christian, before I move on to the next topic of consciousness?
I don't know, free will, like all these questions we're going to talk about are slippery slope a lot right now in the evolution of our species. To know these answers, they're just questions we have.
Yeah, I've said this before. I don't know if I know I've said it to Gerry. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, Christian, before, which is that there's something about our psychology as humans, which is we need conflict, and not knowing in a way is conflict. It's sort of for lack of a better word, a negative response or input. You know, I've always said that. So you know, the basic of the basic, which is you're hungry, your stomach starts to growl, it motivates you to look for food. You're lonely, you know, that's a negative input. It motivates you to go find, you know, someone to be with in your life or whatever. It always seems to be like you need something, because if everything was perfect, you had everything you ever needed, and all these questions that are out there in the universe, if they were all solved, then why get out of bed? Does that make that makes any sense? Like we sort of need, I guess, the horse with the carrot in front of them. We need something to get us moving, to get us motivated.
Yeah, and you throw hormones into that free will argument, and then it gets really tricky.
Yeah, they're going down a whole other rabbit hole with that. All right, I want to transition
especially as we start to get older, we start to see how much those hormones affected our decision making back then.
Definitely, man. I consider myself a different person. Do we really have
free will or not? I don't know.
Exactly. I don't think we solved that riddle.
No, not yet.
But let's go in, like I said, let's go into the consciousness. And when I bring up consciousness, I'm saying, you know, traditionally in psychology, I would say, you know, Freud brought up, I guess, the idea of a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, right? But beyond that, let's talk about the mind, of the consciousness, subconsciousness. But beyond that, like, where do thoughts come from?
Well, Gerry, you can hop in if you want, or I can go.
Sure, go ahead, get us started.
Well, I think we should start with the basics. Is the thoughts are created in our brain.
Okay.
And we create the thoughts in our brain.
So
why does the brain create thoughts the way it does? Because that's how we were taught to do it.
Okay, so we're the engine behind that. We're generating everything. It's coming from us. There's no possible way it's coming from anything else. Is that what you believe?
I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but the vast majority of them throughout the day we're creating in our own brains. We create them. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, right, somebody else may have a different view, and that's okay with me. But the vast majority of thoughts I have, I'm creating, and I have had, supernatural experiences in different plant medicine ceremonies where I experienced external beings communicating with me. But at the end of the day, I can't really tell you, yes, that was an external being, or that was just the plant affecting the chemistry of my brain, and my brain was creating that. I can't say it, right. But either way, it was equally powerful for me, which is, I think, the really important aspect of that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so this ties it back to this point, right, of subjectivity. You know, Christian here, he says, I don't know if that was real or not, but it was powerful, right? And if that had happened to me, I think what I would have said is, I don't know if it was real or not, but I choose to believe that it's real, because its power tells me it's real. It had a powerful effect on me. So, hence, I feel that in a sense it's real, because real things can change it, the situation. And heck, even non-real things can change a situation for that matter. But it's all, to me, it comes down to a lot of life is very ambiguous. Like you show, for instance, an illusion, right? Have you ever seen that illusion where if you look at it from one angle, it looks like a beautiful woman, and a different angle looks like an old man, right? That's a perfect example that's commonly used in psychology to show same stimuli, different interpretation. And to some extent, you have to choose what you want to see. You have to imbue reality with meaning and say, I'm going to choose it. So for instance, one time, I'll quickly tell this story. One time when I came to Indiana, I actually heard I heard what I believe is God's voice talk to me. It said it screamed out my name, and when I went upstairs to check it out, no one was there. Now that could have been my brain just firing, and maybe because I was scared or whatever. I could have been about to fall asleep. I don't think it was, but I choose to believe that was real. And I think that's true of a lot of these questions. But your question, Richard, was about the self, right? Where does that come from?
Consciousness. Self is kind of coming next. But all these topics kind of bleed into each other.
Yeah, they do.
Well, it was the first one was where do thoughts come from?
Yeah, the conscious mind, where the thoughts come from. I mean, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I think for me, I feel like, my thoughts come from my brain for sure, but my brain's also an antenna. An antenna to what? I'm not sure. I think to the supernatural, to a spiritual world. I think it's also an antenna to an archetypal universal mind of some kind, that sends me the patterns. It builds some of them right into me, and some of them it taps into. And that's why I feel like to some extent, a lot of my behavior, my thoughts are influenced in part based on my history, my brain, my free will, but also my interaction with these dynamic patterns that I'm trying to make sense of in dreams, and figure out, well, why did I just dream of a dog who was handing me a sword? What is that about?
Dreams are fun.
Yeah,
we could go on a whole nother rabbit hole of dreams.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, because I think now it leads into the next part of consciousness, which is I'm of the idea that we are sort of multiple selves. And I think the science sort of supports that, because I think you could say in a way we have, at a minimum, four minds. And I'm going to explain it. You have a consciousness, right? And I believe that we have a subconsciousness, which is your conscious mind.
What do you mean by consciousness?
That's why I'm going to explain that right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I mean by the conscious mind, which is, remember I talked about that experiment where you meditate, right? And then you tell yourself, focus on one thing, which is, I usually do breathing, mindfulness meditation, right? So my conscious mind says, okay, do this thing, just focus in on your breathing. I think the subconscious mind is where you sort of takes you and drifts you off, because these thoughts are generated and sort of pop up, right? I'm breathing, I'm focusing on my breath, right? Counting in and out. Next thing you know, a thought about my childhood just pops into my mind, right? That's my subconscious. Like, I think we have very little control over that generation of thoughts where are just popping up. And I think that happens in the subconscious. But then my conscious mind goes, okay, this event that happened in your childhood popped up, but you have control, going back to like free will, release that thought and go back to the meditation, focus on your breath, right? So that's what I mean when I kind of describe the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, right? But I'm talking more also, because I said, I think there's four minds. Sorry, 4, not 8, which is physically, the brain is divided into 2 halves, right? There's a more analytical side, and there's a more, emotional side. And we've done experiments where you part the brain in half because of some sort of mental illness or something that's going on, and the person will behave like 2 different people. Their left hand will be doing something like strangling somebody, and their right hand will be like, no, stop. So if you think of it in terms of those 4 examples, we at least have 4 different minds. Or am I crazy?
Oh, you're crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're definitely right that
Maybe yes is the answer to both of those.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously a part of us that is active when we're not aware of it, right? In psychology,
Exactly.
they call that the implicit cognition system, and we have that at the very minimum. And I think we also have something called the default mode network, which is basically it's whenever your frontal lobe is not engaged in critical thinking, it when it turns itself off, this
Mhm.
other system turns itself on. And what's
Right.
interesting about this system is that it's involved in a lot of weird things, like it's involved in the future, in the past, and thinking about your own narrative story. So you talked
Wow.
about mindfulness and meditation. Well, the reason why these thoughts pop into your head is because as you're trying to focus, the default mode network suddenly turns itself on and it brings up something from your past. Just remember that one time when your mom didn't buy you that ice cream cone, how sad you felt, or you think about what you have to do in the future. But
Mhm.
what I find interesting about this system is that it's fundamentally a meaning-making system. It's an unconscious system that makes meaning out of your life. And so what that tells me is that when you're not in the here and now and trying to solve problems or enjoy life, your brain is devotes a lot of its energy to making meaning. And I think that's part of a major part of the unconscious, is to help you make meaning out of what you're experiencing mindfully.
Any thoughts on that, Christian?
No, I agree with that. Again, on this topic, we know so little about even our own brains and how they work. But yeah, definitely the brain is, in overdrive in just about every moment, trying to make meaning of everything. And to the point of, narrating in our head everything that goes on around us. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, that's a this, that's a that, just constantly going on in the background in our brains, trying to make meaning of it all so we don't just lose our shit and freak out every second, every time something changes in the space.
Yeah. It sounds to me, I mean, just listening to both you guys, obviously there's different ways of seeing it. And I'm sort of leaning towards Gerry, where Gerry said that, I believe one thing and I believe the total opposite at the same time. It's like we maybe human beings just aren't capable of wrapping our brains around this.
Not currently.
Yeah.
I think we need currently in the state that our brains are. I mean, if you look at evolution, our brains are like still very early. We're babies in the evolutionary game.
Right.
And our brains are just smart enough to ask all the questions, but not smart enough to figure out the answers
Yeah.
currently.
But it's important
maybe
to
artificial intelligence will
that's
help
another rabbit
us
hole
in that regards. But yeah, another one. Yeah, exactly. And then can an artificial intelligence that's been programmed by the human brain solve those problems? Is a question I'm interested in.
What do you think, Gerry?
Can an artificial intelligence solve some of those problems? I don't know. I think a machine can deal with problems in the physical world. The metaphysical world, I'm not so sure. I think we're hybrids, half material, half something else. Some people call that spiritual. Some people call it different things. But I think any model of human behavior has to account for the otherness, the mystery that is, sort of the human mind. It's not mystery is not just a label that's placed upon what we don't know yet. That's different. Mystery is something that's best understood not knowing, because the more you try to know it, the more confusing it becomes. And so I think that computer models that try to know the mysterious are going to break down. You have to allow a black box.
Right. So just to go into that whole AI thing for a little bit, because I think it's related, but I don't want to go completely down that rabbit hole, is what I'm sure you've heard this before, because Gerry, you're in the psychology world. They used to say a thing, they probably still do, that as a therapist, right? You can only take a client as far as you've gone. You can't take someone past where you are. So if I'm thinking about an AI, right? An AI, can it go past what we're able to accomplish? I think that it could mimic consciousness and life. You know, obviously we can make that happen. Like, and how are we going to tell the difference? But how can it know more than what we know if we're the one building it, is what I'm saying, constructing and putting in all the information. Does that make any sense?
I think it could put the pieces that we give it together in a different combination than we're currently capable of seeing. So the way we're putting all the information we have currently is not giving us answers to these questions, whereas artificial intelligence has the ability to, you know, simulate these different circumstances and events and data in all kinds of different ways and possibilities, you know, trillions and trillions of times.
Yeah, because it has
all different ways
unlimited
that we can't do ourselves.
Yeah, because it has unlimited space, capacity, and speed, right? That's one of the main things about computers, how it just computes things so fast. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that all of that you're saying, Christian, is true. I agree with that. But I guess the point that I'm trying to say is, even with that, humanity could accomplish what the AI, what the machine is doing. It just can't do it as fast, or we would get to that point, is what I'm saying. I don't know if something we
Probably
create,
eventually.
right? But I'm saying, I don't know if something we create can ever go past what we are. We'll probably always lag behind the AI in ideas and things that it does. But I think that it's something within our power. I don't think it would ever achieve something that's beyond our capabilities.
I mean, I think
it's an exciting. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gerry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think in terms of analytical thinking, a machine can definitely do that, and they already do that. I mean, machines can be obviously chess champions, and I think you're making the point that, yeah, but that's more of a processing limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true too. But I think they can come up with analytical solutions way better than we can. They can also be, I think, creative. I mean, there's a lot of creativity involves taking one search space, stopping and jumping to another search space and doing it differently. Computer can be trained to do that. But if that's all that man is, an analytical thinking machine, then I would say, yeah, absolutely, it'll surpass us. It has surpassed us. But if man is more than that, then no, I don't think a machine can recreate that, whatever that black box is.
Yeah. I like that. So by the way,
maybe we have a true merging of consciousness with the machines, possibly in some distant future. But until then, I agree. I think I'm on Gerry's side with that.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think eventually there's some sort of merging between, I guess, the mechanical world and the biological world. I think that eventually something like that will happen. And if you watch a lot of sci-fi, go on Netflix or whatever, there is a lot of talk about that, a lot of stories. Or like I mentioned Westworld on HBO. That show was just a mind trip to me, man. There's just so many interesting stuff going on in there. But by the way, hold on, I just want to say that I didn't upgrade my Zoom account, so we're about to run out of time recording. But let's just keep on having this debate because I really like it. Do you guys agreed with that?
I might be able to turn mine on to record.
Oh, nice. Can you do that?
So we're on your account. That's right. We're on your account.
Yeah. How about you, Gerry? Could you record on your thing?
We could start over.
Yeah, part two. I'll call you guys back up.
We can start over.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can send us a new link?
Yeah, I'll send you guys a new link.
Okay.
All right, every listeners, stand by for part two of the debate on reality. Here we go.